So welcome everyone. Today Namali and I will be speaking with John Dupuy, who is the founder of iWake. And iWake is a company that uses, among other things, binaural technology, which is a way to help people to focus better, to meditate deeper, to feel more at ease and relaxed, to concentrate more deeply. John is also involved in helping people to recover from addiction and to create habits that contribute to a constructive life. So, John, could you please speak more to yourself and your activities for the people watching?
Let's see. I'm also a co-host of a relatively new podcast with Roger Walsh, Deep Transformation, which has been a total yoga for me. I mean, it's been really, really good. Yeah, it's all kind of deep transformation. What can we do to survive as a species in a good way, the best way possible, not just our survival, but all our other brothers and sisters on this planet that don't happen to be human. They need to get a chance to evolve. And got to know Ken Wilber very early on in graduate school back in, I guess it was the late 80s and early 90s. And I read some of Ken's first work. And then later on, I discovered his later work, which I think started out. Well, I read a PDF file that was What is Integral, and that eventually turned into The Integral Vision, a little short book. And I read it and I was just, oh my God, this is great. And I was struggling with developing programs to help young people that were struggling with alcoholism and addiction. And to me, it was just like the Rosetta Stone, for treating addiction. Everything fell into place, everything that was missing, everything that we were doing well. I mean, just every dimension just covered. And I just thought it was so brilliant. And I saw it so clearly. And I was sure somebody else was already using it. It turned out there was an early paper whose authors were impossible to find years later when I tried to track them down. But yeah, there was somebody that was playing with the idea, but never really implemented it. And then I wrote a couple of papers and I got to be known as Integral Recovery Guy, and integral folks have as much problems with alcoholism and addiction as anybody else. But I do find that if people have interjected the aqua map, that it's easier, they make faster progress in getting better if they so commit themselves, because it's just helps. It's like, well, the map's not the territory. Well, non-dually, it is the territory, and the map is the same damn thing. So get over that one. So it seemed to work, and that was a big deal for me. And then I started using brain entrainment technology as a way to enhance people's meditative experience, because we knew from the 12 steps and just knew that spiritual line was essential to human health and evolution, getting well. But most people, including myself, is having a hard time. You get a bunch of addicts that are just on drugs and try to get them to sit there for an hour or whatever, meditate. It's very interesting, but I don't think it's meditation. So I started using this technology before iWake and having tremendous results. Our house is full of my beloved addicts and alcoholics, and we had our meditation room upstairs. And in the first, week or so, everyone just crashed out on the cushion. And after about a week, people start assuming the position, and they started taking it seriously because they could feel the transformation, and they could feel that, hey, this is for me. This is not because my mama said I had to do it or the church says I had to do it. This is spiritual. This is me, but this is mine. And they really started owning that. And so we would meditate an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. Can you imagine? Like early recovery, incredible stuff. And, they were surely just as much my teacher as I was theirs. And we did that for about 8 years. And, no time off for good behavior. And so finally my wife said, John, I think you need to stop that. That's really hard stuff. So we stopped doing that. And then the opportunity came to, Eric Thompson, who was an integralist who had also just struggled with depression as I had deeply. And we'd both used brain entrainment technology to help us, to save our lives, basically. And he was creating these things. So I said, well, why don't you give me some of your tracks and we'll see what you have. And by that time, I'd been doing it for 2 or 3 years. And I'd use all, Holosync and all the different ones that were Insight Meditation, all the brands that were available. So I was kind of a connoisseur of the technology. And I listened to his stuff and I said, man, this is good. Want to do this? Let's do it together. And we started the company together with my wife, Pam, and we worked together, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And, we had an amicable separation. He was going his own way, and we're still love and respect each other, but we carried it on. And it's been going kind of 11 or 12 years now. And it's been remarkable. And of course, getting back to the integral thing, and I'll shut up whenever you want, so you can ask a question. But one of the most powerful ideas that came out of the integral, and I'm assuming the people who are listening to this know something about integral. Is that true?
Some may and some may not.
Okay. Yeah. Well, to me, one of the most essential ideas that came out of the whole integral movement, explosion, opening, help me, Namali, whatever those words are. You explain this stuff better than almost anybody. Was the idea of integral practice, integral transformative practice, and that was the idea that really hooked me from the very beginning. And I went back and read, George Leonard and Michael Murphy's, first book, The Life We Were Given. And they were doing this at Esalen. And then, of course, it got into the hands of Ken Wilber. And, he transformed it and made it better. And I just thought it was great. And, the essential things you got to work on: the body, the mind, your interiors, shadow, trauma, mental processes, and also the spiritual life. That you have to do at least these 4 essential things: ongoing lifetime commitment to evolve as quickly as we need to and become the people that we're potentially being. And the only way that I see any hope for humanity is that enough of us wake up in an integral way, not just wake up in a single line where we become nasty little gurus and project our shadows on everybody while we project really cool non-dual experiences and really confuse everybody. But you've got to do the work. And I just think that's it. And my students who stayed with the practice stayed sober, and went on. And after a while, it's no longer about staying sober. It's just about becoming, following your path and your calling and developing the person into who you need to be, and giving your gifts back to the world, and getting it done as efficiently and compassionately and wisely and effectively as possible.
So a quick question comes up for me, which I realize I've known you for years, but I never quite knew the answer to this. Why was it that you got into the recovery work? Is that your educational background, or are you a therapist? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I trained to be a therapist. I went to graduate school, but I never got licensed to be a therapist. But yeah, that was my graduate education background. And I got into the therapeutic wilderness. I've always been a wilderness person from early on. And we moved out to southern Utah to hang out in the wilderness, find God in the canyons. And we found out that there were these programs that were just nascent, just developing there. That were taking young people out on these long journeys out in the wilderness to work on their problems, okay, like initiatory journeys. And it turned out that 85% of the people that were showing up were young people were having problems with drugs, right, and alcohol. And some of them were addicts. Not everybody who abuses alcohol and drugs are addicts. You go through a phase and go, okay, I'm really tired of feeling like crap in the morning, and this is enough. So I'm going to moderate, or I'm going to quit, and you can do that. The difference with an addict, they can't do that. They've lost all power to control the consumption. It gets more and more, and they have less and less control. And starting on wherever you are on the developmental spiral, when you start, you quickly go back down, to the lowest level that you can get to before you die, right, or get thrown in jail or some other catastrophe. So yeah, and I'd worked in treatment centers in the Bay Area before we moved out to Utah, and I knew the basics of the 12 steps and what was passing for treatment at the time, and I just thought it was really insufficient is the word. As much as God bless AA and 12 steps to save millions of lives, but it only works with a small percentage of the people. But even that small number of people, it happens to be millions of folks. So they were the people that were doing it for decades, not making any money. Nobody becoming a guru, not copywriting the same, just people helping people. It's really noble and brilliant, but it wasn't enough. it missed big portions of it. So that's when I rediscovered Kin and the Aqua Map. It's just been around, I don't know, year and a half or so. And it was just like, I think a lot of us, when we first discovered that, it was just this moment of enlightenment, at least intellectual enlightenment. You saw the vision of it. Wow, this is it. So that's where I started working from. And like I said, I started writing some papers. I don't even remember how that happened, and eventually I got the idea I was supposed to write a book. And I was like, seriously, God, you want me to? I don't really consider myself a writer, and much of anything. Anyway, I have self-confidence issues that I deal with, but I did write it, and it's a really good book. Sometimes I pick it up and I go, oh my God, this was channeled for sure. So and it really helped a lot of people, and it made its impact. Largely still hasn't been developed, not being grasped by the majority of the world, just as integral as still a minority of the thinking, but some places have taken it on as their model for treatment and recovery. And of course, I didn't copyright it, just like Ken didn't copyright Integral. Can you imagine? They said, okay, John, you're making your living for doing this. You gotta pay me so much money a month, which would probably have been his right, but he didn't, which is why I started the Ken Wilber Gratitude Fund. Mm-hmm. So those of us have been so influenced and blessed by him in many ways can give back while he's still here. The time to show people that you love them and care about them is not at the funeral services, which is not bad, but you make sure you've said everything you need to say before, they lay the body down. And, but thank God Ken is still with us. Amazingly, all the stuff he's been through, and he's still cranking out. So we're tremendously blessed by him. So I'm just rambling. Go ahead. I'll stop.
Well, John, no, it's really beautiful how you're describing your journey. And I think what might make it even more interesting for people to hear is if you could speak to perhaps just using the quadrants as a model to how you saw what was missing in the standard approach to addiction and how you complemented that. You've already said, for instance, in the upper left that you added the contemplative or meditative practices. And what other things did you add, for instance, if we look at the quadrants? Yeah,
that's a good question. Well, what AA did are 12 steps, because there's a lot of 12-step groups. It's not all alcoholic. I'm just Cocaine's Anonymous, this Anonymous, that Anonymous, any issue, compulsive issue you might have has developed 12-step groups. Had a very, very effective and powerful lower left we space community to support people. And it's largely become, a support group. And, where the people who have more experience share their stories with other people who are just beginning the journey, and, help people to get to meetings, because you often lose your licenses, when you've been, drinking and been an alcoholic. Anyway, so they're really good in the we space. Everything else was really deficient. Okay. So you go to the upper left, and step 11, I think it says sought through prayer and meditation to increase our conscious contact with God, seeking only his will and the power to carry it out. Boy, is that a good rule to live by. I mean, that's awesome. But it really wasn't, it wasn't done in AA. They didn't have, there wasn't, meditation was talked about, but nobody was teaching meditation unless you happen to be luckily in a group and you find some kind of gurus in recovery, and you could tell you, but it wasn't built in. And prayer was kind of like, hey, Lord, help me to stay sober today. And at the end of the day, thank you for keeping me sober today and help me stay sober. And that's a little petitionary prayer, which is fine. It's noble. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not deep, interior, transformative work. So there, lots to be done in the upper left. And of course, the technology is a big help. And it's not just happy thoughts. I found it very, very useful to help you process the pain, being alive, and God keeps giving me triple decker pain sandwiches, to process. And so by being present with it and just, thank you, God, thank you, teacher, here we go. And just being present with it, finally you come out the other end, maybe purified, maybe, a better sense of where you're at, humbler, more connected, more hopeful in a kind of a very deep way, even though you may not see, the solution. You realize that there's an ultimate goodness working itself out here. So, so the upper left, and of course the upper right, addiction, among other things, is a brain disease. Okay, it's a scientifically proven brain disease. You can see what parts of the brain it affects and what neurochemicals are depleted and what the drugs are doing to exhaust these brain chemicals and to replace them and blah, blah, blah. It's a huge amount. And exercise and how that helps restore the body, all of that. 12-step, nothing there. Okay, or very, very little. And in the lower right, I don't know. There's just so much. I mean, to have, I guess it's done something. Groups have developed and they have treatment centers and stuff like that. But there just needs to be more of everything. And whatever is good for recovering alcoholics and addicts, I've learned, is good for human beings. Okay. The 12 steps would be adopted by everyone on the planet. It's super good. It's like spirituality 101 to become a decent human being, and why do addicts get it? Because they're really squeaky wheels and they have this compulsive developmental attacking progressive disease. It gets worse and worse and it's terminal. Okay. If it's not arrested. So yeah, there's just all kinds of things, and there needs to be money and technology and so much there, and getting people in meaningful jobs, that they can say, hey man, this is what I got a reason to be alive now. I have something to do. I have a reason to show up in the morning, and there's people dependent upon me. And all of that stuff really helps solidify the decision to stay sober and the decision to stay alive, right? So I hope that kind of gave a general overview.
Oh, absolutely, John. It's perfect, and it also gives an example of how you are an embodiment of practical, integral theory. So basically, you're turning theory into practice and helping people improve their lives while doing so. And another thing I want to offer to the people who are watching this, because I know that you, via iAwake, have distributed free MP3s or at least free audio files, and I think you still do, which people can listen to, and they can experience the brain entrainment technique or technology. And my experience with that has been very, very profound. And one of the things that I experienced, and I don't know if this is the same for everyone, but I experienced an increased perception of space, of spatial awareness. And my sense was that, and I wanted to ask this to you, is that something or what might happen by using this iAwake technology is that you constrict less and expand more and become less focused around the, let's say, small self or your lower needs and desires. Would you concur?
Yeah, that's really well put. And and I wouldn't say every time, but this is part of a practice. Over time, that really does begin to be true. And when I first started using this technology, I'm not an addict. That's not my deal, but deep depression was. And my older brother committed suicide, and I had the same sort of level of, I wanted to kill myself for a long time, but I wouldn't do it because I saw what it did to my family, what it did to me. I wouldn't give my parents another suicide. Seriously? No. God, kill me, take me home, but I won't do it myself. So when I started using this technology, I began to, first of all, I had a big non-dual classified ding. And of course, I'd studied transpersonal psychology, and I'd had my first big spiritual opening when I think I was 11 years old. So I've kind of been haunted by God and by non-dual and all those spiritual experiences for years. I say haunted because when you come back, and it's like, oh, here I am, so as screwed up as ever in the world. I haven't changed a bit. What do I do with this? So that's where practice helps. And now psychedelics are making they're coming back. Who would have thought they're here, and they're starting to do science. And of course, the capitalists are getting into it. Who knows? I don't know if you can control psychedelics. Good luck with that. But they're trying to make a buck out of it. But who knows? But one of the essential things is when you go in, not to expect one experience to do all the work for you. You will see a lot and you'll experience a lot, and then maybe you release a lot and learn a lot. But if you don't have a practice going into it, prepare you, and a practice that continues after the experience, it'll be very hard to hold on to and stabilize it. It'll be just a will o' the wisp and it'll be gone. So you really need practices. And we also enter into those non-dual, as you were saying, spacious places in the practice. And the more you do it, the better you get. Like, I'm pretty good at stopping myself from thinking at this point when I meditate. Thinking is a choice. Wow, I'm so spiritual. No, I just done it for so long. If I just sat there and practiced free throws with a basketball for as many hours and many years as I've meditated, I would like to think I would be pretty good at shooting free throws. And so, with enough time, anybody can get relatively good with that. But that's just the beginning of it. What I've come to now. And I've kind of discovered the centering meditation or centering prayer in my practice. And I thought I'd been in something really cool, focus on the heart, open to God. Boom. And I found out I went to a monastery and found out it's all these books. All these guys have been doing it a long time. I didn't have quite as much, Christian jargon attached to it, but it was essentially the same practice. But when I can stop my mind, that's when prayer can start. Okay. And obviously, I'm not talking about petitionary prayer. There's nothing wrong with petitionary prayer. Sometimes it's good to just talk second person, God, hey, Lord, it's me again. Yep, I'm still fucked up and I need help. So please, show me which way to walk and how to be a better person, be a better man. And what do you want me to do with this situation? Because it feels overwhelming and I feel lost. So, and be clear, because if it's subtle, I'll probably miss it. So anyway, that's kind of how I do my second person, or talking with God as other. But it's in those open, expanded spaces that your little drama can, take on, be held in a much cosmic perception of it. And when I first started using, I'll tell you a little, I had the first 2 or 3 days of using brain entrainment technology. I had this big, huge non-dual experience, and boom, I was everything. Thou art that, right? Everything is God and thou art that. That was kind of experience. And okay. And I kind of knew this, but it was very, very, not just an intellectual perception, but a full bodied, non-dual opening. But one of the things that was really clear is there was little old John, who was everything, like a holographic thing, my little dinky self-contained all. But the teaching was, but the little self is really, really important. Your individual little ego self is important. And I just laughed. I said, really? Because, we've been told for years, it's a fantasy. It doesn't exist. It's blah, 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 And every time people believe that, I don't see it accomplish anything very good, because they deny the ego and they get their ass kicked by the ego almost every time, or you become so dissociated, it's not really where you want to be as a human being. So I have learned that our individual little self is it's our little territory of our godness, and how we take care of that and what we do with that is very, very important. And it is our responsibility and to take care of that and make sure that we are doing the best that we can to be the best that we can be. And whatever that takes, it means going into the shadow, it means meditating, it means exercising, eating, it means reading hard books. Whatever that takes, right? And walking in the woods, loving everyone, being kind to animals and old people, and, hugging trees, whatever that takes, we need to be there, because that is real. And I did an interview recently with Christopher Bache on the podcast. And I don't know if you know or familiar with his work, but he did a book called LSD in the Mind of the Universe. And he did 73 super high dose LSD experiences over a 10-year period. And this man is a PhD, a professor of religion, philosophy, and a tenured professor. He's very smart, very humble man. I don't think anybody could have handled that experience as well as he did. He didn't inflate, but one of the messages he got, hey, dummy, this is not just for you. You're not just seeing all this stuff. So he wrote it down, and we talked to him. But one of the things he said, which confirmed what I saw, what I learned in that experience about the importance of the individual, was that it is not individuality that is the problem. It's separation. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. When the individual becomes separated from all that we are, then it becomes a real issue. But when it comes reconnected to all we are, then it becomes one of the most beautiful things that we've seen in the universe that God, this whole thing, whatever you want to call it, has ever come up with. And it just keeps getting better.
John, it's a very beautiful depiction of how we can relate to our individual self. And I was also struck by the way in which our individual self is like an instrument, a musical instrument, and we can learn to play it. And the thing is that we can then also create sounds together, so to speak, with our instruments, and create more than the sum of the parts.
I was curious, actually, just if you can, I know Lee gave a good description of what the technology is when it comes to iAwake, which is this work that you dedicated yourself for many, many years now. I think it's still like brain entrainment and all that just still sounds a little abstract to even people like me. So I'm actually curious if you can just explain a little bit about what it is and what is the practice that people are actually doing. Do you have to have a headset, or can groups do this together, or is it really just
yeah?
Tell us a little bit about the actual iAwake work.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the guy that creates these things. We have these great, genius developers that do the work, and it's about 50% science and 50% art. They to create these things. It's intuitive and it's very scientific at the same time. And we had a woman who did her PhD dissertation. Anyway, I think she's if you download the free app, you see everything we have, and I think she's on her interview is on there. So she did a study of 50 different peer-reviewed papers that were done on this technology, and they had to be done in the last 5 years. They had to be recent, and blah blah blah, all these things, because they've been researching this stuff for a long time, and almost across the board, they found out that it was very effective. What they she said it didn't do. The brain, it's not entraining the brain. It's not technically entraining when you have two fans going together and all of a sudden they start doing the same thing. It wasn't quite that, but it was something else. And, but it was the effects that we were saying, we're talking about were true and real and very verified by all these studies. And the only studies that didn't show anything happening are the ones where people only listen to it like 3 to 5 minutes. And we've known for years that it takes at least 8 to 10 minutes for it to actually kick in. So, but everything else was very solid. So, and I struggled with years. Well, what did we call it besides brain training? And not for years. It's about interviews about a year old, or her paper was, and I couldn't find anything. So I say, entrainment with the caveat that it's not exactly classical entrainment that we're thinking, but it's just you are entraining the brain into deeper meditative states. And we use the binaural beats, which is the essential beginning technology, which you have, say 10 beats in this headphone, and let's see, and 10 in our, how would that be? Anyway, you split the difference, but say 20 and 1, and it splits it and it creates a false wave in the brain at 10. So you split the difference by having these two different number or oscillations, you can actually, the brain creates a new brainwave to whatever desired brainwave you want. And we've learned since the 70s when they started studying the brains of meditators and nuns and monks, and people did that. It was kind of primitive back then, but they found that when they do these practices, the brainwaves would actually go to these deeper levels, and that you could change your brainwave states through practices. And before that, Western science thought that meditation and yoga and all this kind of, mumbo jumbo, superstitious, and all this, found that it was real. And then later on, we found that we could actually do that with sound. We could create the same thing, which is really good news, because often it takes people many years of dedicated practice to get to the point where you can actually start really having these powerful brainwave states. And often, even with advanced meditators, you spike down into these lower states, but you don't stay there for long. So with this technology, you can stay down there as long as you want. And I remember Ken Wilber saying one time that he had meditated for 5 years, 2 hours a day before he felt any change.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is superhuman dedication that most of us mere mortals could not pull off. So most of us couldn't, which was why I was kind of an on and off meditator for years, and a lot of people were. But when you find something finally actually works really quickly, it's still, you still got to keep doing it, over time. The practice is what is practice? It is cultivation through repetition. So what you're trying to cultivate, whether you want to be smarter, whether it's a spiritual practice, you want to be deeper and more connected spiritually, whatever it is, it just takes the effort and the time to do it. And you have to make a commitment. And some of it's harder than others. If we have young kids, we have to get up early in the morning to make sure, we get our time in, or whatever we have to do. But when we discover that, practice, we go through these states of change as well. You think, I don't need to change. Maybe I need to change. Oh, that's what I got to do to change. Oh, I'm thinking, okay, I'll change. Then I'm changing. I'm changed. Try to stop me. This is what I do. It just becomes something you don't even think about anymore. It's just like I'm saying this thing. So I meditated this morning before this talk, and I ran down to the little gym and did my workout, and got to get back here in time to be here for this conversation. So, and also, not only are we using binaural beats, but there's a lot of different technologies, isochronic rhythms and subtle energy things. And sometimes they're layered together, and sometimes you have different mixes of brainwave states. So it's pretty sophisticated, what's going on. And hopefully we keep improving it and making it better. But some of the stuff we produced in the beginning, it's just terrific. And yes, for most of it, it helps to have headphones or earbuds. Works fine. Some people say headphones are better, but anyway, problem solved. But earbuds work also. And if you do it in a group where you're all meditating, to the same track, boy, there is a field that gets connected, which I discovered with my students back in your treatment center. It's really, really powerful. Just as when you're traditionally meditating, it'd be great, but when you're meditating with others, especially if there's some advanced meditators around, you can really create a powerful unitive field. And it works on Zoom too. We do a We Awake meditation every week where we get together and we do the same track with people all over the world. It sure feels like a powerful connection. And I think, did I answer?
What is the beat? What is the actual beat made of? Like, is it like a digital sound? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
But you don't hear. I mean, in the early days when they started doing it, it was just blah, 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 it was just pretty irritating. And then you would hear it underneath, and now you can't hear it at all. It's we use nature sounds. It can be the sounds of the ocean, the sounds of a waterfall, the sounds of a rainstorm, thunder, lightning, drone music, stuff that's a little more interesting. Try to all kinds of things, and if you look at the I Awake app, which is free, you can see all the stuff that we've created over the years. It's quite a library.
Okay. Yeah. So you're still involved in the I Awake, and that's your main line of work at the moment, and the podcast.
Yeah, I'd say that's what keeps me the busiest. And I've also come involved with integralists from Ukraine and trying to raise fund and support for them. I went to the IEC in Hungary. I just got back a while back, and one of the main reasons I went was to meet with Katya and Vitas, person that I'd met prior to that, but that were going to be there, and I just went and connected them. There were a number of Ukrainians there. It was very powerful, very moving, and I was on a panel. Very powerful experience for me. Talking about war. What do you do as an integralist? What do you do about war? It's like violence, and most of us are deeply green in the integral movement because it's kind of, you got to get there before we can go to integral, and we're deeply embedded in that. And one of the things that green doesn't do very well is fight. And I went through that. I went through a stage where I was pretty much a pacifist, and I couldn't see violence for any reason at all. Just thought of destroying another living being was just way too much. I tried to handle, but I don't believe that anymore. I think there's some times when you have to resist. And Gandhi, God bless him, was a great hero of mine. But the reason his stuff worked is he's dealing with the British, and they were at a certain developmental level, and they'd been through World War I and World War II. They're about sick of being an empire at that point. And, the people loved him. It really caught on, and it really worked in that case. Would that have worked with Hitler or with Vladimir Putin, or that heroic man who stood in front of the tanks at Tiananmen Square? Did he stop the slaughter? No, they killed. And Roger was telling me that when the Chinese invaded Tibet, they were fighting like lions to resist the Chinese from coming in. Then Dalai Lama said, stop fighting. And the Chinese went on to slaughter 2 million Tibetans. So maybe that wasn't the right move at that time, So we all have to look at our souls and our consciences to see, what the correct thing is. But when, if there is a justification for violence, it's to stop genocide, stop slaughter, rapine, and the destruction of a country just because I fucking want it, My ego says I want to be the great emperor and I want to be Putin the Great, because I really think that would be cool, and I got a bunch of money and I have this army that actually sucks. They're not nearly as good as they thought they were because they're so corrupt. If you want to build a first-class army, first lesson we're learning, don't be corrupt. And when it starts at the head and goes all the way down to the people that are supplying the parts and building the pieces, they're taking their share too, and they're finding that the weapons that are coming from democracies, not that we don't have problems with corruption, but it's just a matter of degrees, work a lot better, So what are we going to do? Is democracy worth fighting for? I think so. And apparently they think so. That's what's really important. They believe it. And, is the Russian system an attractive system? Would you like to be under Putin, who would, send you to prison for 15 years for calling a war a war? Really? No. And nobody else does either. I mean, these people want to be a part of the West. They've tasted the West. They've seen what it's like in Western Europe. And they've seen democracy, and they've seen what freedom feels like. And they've lived in states controlled by the KGB and, Gestapo-like tactics and all like that. And they're willing to fight and die for it. Really fight. Amazingly so. So anyway, I just feel it's our if we can help, we should. And it's going to be a long-term process. And once the fighting starts, there's going to be so much work to be done. So many, the trauma and the broken families and, it's massive. But anyway, I felt called to be a part of that, the little bit I can do.
How did, just going a little bit back into recovery work, just because it's such important work for the whole world for, time to come. Is that something you might return to, or you have really just moved on from that?
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever run a treatment program again. And I have stopped doing clients online and stuff. And sometimes I could work with people online if they weren't too far down, where they're living in a box, on the street, and a meth addict. You can't do a Zoom session that's going to help with that at all. They need to go to a treatment center, and they need to be in treatment for a long, long time. Yeah. I don't do that anymore, but I've had other people that have kind of taken up that for me. And when people call me about it, I have recommendations of people they can work with, or institutions. Well, Pam and I worked in therapeutic wilderness for years, so we know a lot of therapists, and we know people, and we're running treatment centers, and people who make it their job to stay current with all that. So we can be a lot of help. But no, I don't do that any more than just maybe speaking about or talking about it. But what I learned in that book, you could just apply it to every human being. At the very beginning, I was telling them, I said, look, what you guys are doing here, and everyone needs to do it. And the families I'd work with, I'd get them doing the practices. It's not just you screwed up addicts that need this. It's everyone. And you're just getting it because, you're the leaders. You're the squeaky wheels that are getting attention because you have this compulsive disorder that's going to kill you if we don't arrest it. And not only do we want to stop it, but we want to make you, help you find out who you are and make you the best person you could possibly be.
Yeah. So I can see how you have already spoken about the 4 quadrants as it plays out in addiction recovery treatment. iAwake is obviously, there's a lot to do with state training, right? Kind of getting into the right state, right?
Yes.
How would you encourage someone to, or how would you say that development is looked at in addiction recovery treatment from an integral perspective? What are the developmental stages in relation to this work?
Yeah, that's probably one of the most powerful contributions that Aqua, MAP, or Integral gave to the field of recovery. Because before it was just kind of sober, not sober.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clear that when whatever state you're at, say that you're kind of hanging out, whether healthy orange, right? Modernist. And you get, and we start going, and the whole process starts, first it's on the weekends, it's every day. And then you start lying to yourself about it, you start lying to your others about it. And it becomes the whole purpose that you're on the planet is to get more drugs. Okay. Well, at that point, you begin to go down the spiral very, very quickly. It is a morally, ethically devastating condition. So things that you wouldn't do before, you'll steal, you'll lie, you'll manipulate, you'll sell your body, you'll sell other people's bodies. You'll hurt people, you'll steal, you'll break into their homes. It takes you way down to a completely toxic, sociopathic, psychopathic level. And sometimes if it does break through and you realize what you become, it's so devastating. You just want to take more drugs and kill yourself. And it feels hopeless, and you're in hell and you'll never get out. That's what it feels like to be when you're really, really at the later progressions of this disease. So we find that when you begin to do the work and you get sober and you begin to do the practices, and very quickly you can regain your prior level of development. And in the case of the individual, you can go back to orange. And then, of course, they found that meditation is one of the few things that seems to be able to speed up the developmental spiral more quickly and more effectively. And of course, integral practice makes sure that it's just not a singular line. It's just one thing that gets developed, but you bring the rest of you with it. So and being aware that there are higher stages of development than your own can be very inspiring and very humbling at the same time. Oh, I'm not the top of the mountain here. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of growth, so I can get to those higher levels. And so it really just gives a whole directionality to the whole journey from down into hell and up into more noble, more beautiful, more effective, compassionate, wiser, effective ways of levels of development. It's really a big part of it.
Yeah. I think I can imagine how one can see how once you have fallen deeply down, you can sort of see the climbing back up. You have to have a healthy sense of ego once again. Like to tell an addict that your life matters, and for them to realize, I am powerful, I do have the power, I matter, and I'm going to be selfish about my recovery. Like the red egocentric stage, it's a valuable the healthy aspect of it is really valuable. And then the sort of obviously, I guess AA and a lot of treatment work that comes with a religious background really does a lot of good traditional value systems.
Sure. It's really healthy blue or amber, essential stuff. And addiction is really red or below. So it's like a totally important thing. It works really well.
Bringing in
the problem is it usually stops there, It stops kind of that healthy blue. And then when you sense that there's something above that, there's not a lot of support there. So you have to, leave the group or go elsewhere. And oftentimes there's not a lot of support. Like, I learned everything I need to learn from this, and it's time to move on. So it's kind of got that.
Yeah. There's always sort of a healthy return to agency that happens at red, which can kind of return to a good, healthy agency at orange. And plus all sort of like the idea that, traditional values were really good, but now I want to get out and sort of make something of myself, of just like making money or coming back into the real world and finding a home, or learning more, educating yourself more, learning the science of treatment. Or I can imagine how all of that from a modernist, rational perspective can be really helpful. And I guess, not now, but you haven't really mentioned it, but trauma work sort of really can begin again at the sensitive self green postmodern stage, where you really feel that sense of kindness and self-compassion, and that trauma work can really begin there as well.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of kindness and compassion and goodness at blue too.
Yes.
And hopefully you can carry that on to orange. I think it was Steve McIntosh, that said that orange, for whatever reason, has not developed the ethical standards it needs to govern itself in a ethical way. So either need to take the traditional blue values, or get some of the green to make it work and make it be a good thing. So
Yeah. And I already know you did a lot of work in your addiction recovery work with the Enneagram, right? So that covers the types base, and of course different types of treatment for sure that we can call psychedelics, or the I Awake, binaural beats kind of work, all of these different types of work, that shamanism or the many different treatment styles can fall under the types. And I'm not sure how you saw work with the lines of development, different lines, or within the recovery field. I can imagine the spiritual line was important to you.
Yeah. Well, all of them, when you're talking about integral practice, of course, you're talking about 4 different capacities. So you have 4 lines right there. And you have the ethical line, the spiritual line, your intellectual line, your kinesthetic, your bodily health line. So you have all these things. And the electronic machines where we used to see our playing our songs and stuff, you could see the different things going there. Well, all of these things kind of need to be, kind of going up together, or it comes out of balance, and you get, problems. You can have the healthiest body in the world, and be really good. That's an excellent thing, but that's not going to get you over addiction. There's other work that needs to be done, and you can do all the spiritual stuff you want to, but if you don't have the emotional, as we mentioned, and the trauma work and the shadow stuff done, as well as the body that's strong enough to do the practices and brain chemistry that's healthy enough so that you can complete these things. So, so there's the 4 essential lines. And, some people have added a 5th line, like the relational line. That's pretty good. So, which I didn't include in the book, but it's talked about now, the same thing. And it probably maybe not one of my best things, my biggest strengths. I don't talk about it much, but I probably should. And then whatever lines, capacities become your calling, because a big part of integral recovery is also the quest for vision, quest just to find out what you're supposed to be doing. If you're giving up all this stuff and you're doing all the changes, well, why are you doing it? What are you supposed to be doing with your life? So often we would have in the wilderness program that developed a passage to recovery of the long spiritual journey through the wilderness would end up with a vision quest experience. And now the last couple of years, I've been doing online vision quest experiences. Really? Well, the pandemic kind of forced that on us. And I found out that if we got together, we worked together for about a week, and we'd have, I'd give a talk and talk about what it is, and give them different tracks to listen to, and go home and do the work and come back, all towards, what are you supposed to be doing with your life, and what's standing in the way of me doing it? What do I need to add? What do I need to give up? And what does that look like? And it became, unlike a traditional vision quest, it's a pretty solitary thing. I mean, you're out there and you're fasting and praying alone in the wilderness. And normally you would have people supporting you. In a traditional one, you'd come back and there would be the medicine person. You'd go into the sweat lodge and they'd help you process the vision. But it was a pretty solitary thing. Well, we found out when you all this together, that it started becoming a very collective kind of visionary experience. And your dream, and the stuff that was going on would actually coincide with what was going on with me. And it was ridiculously effective. I had no idea. So, your life's calling and purpose, once you find that out, what you're really supposed to be doing, oftentimes it will allow you to make the tough decisions, and to be an ethical person. And they say, ethics is what you do when nobody's watching. If you hold yourself accountable because you've been given something to do, it really helps you stay on the path, and kind of brings it all together. So you're not just kind of, wandering a direction. And of course, that all always needs to be fine-tuned. You can kind of get a general idea, but then as conditions change, how does your part keep dialing down to be most effective in whatever situation arises? And that's daily practice.
Yeah, that's really a wonderful perspective that you're bringing to this, and all of the experience that you have. And another question that arose for us when we were thinking about speaking with you about your work is, have you experienced any drawbacks from using integral theory? So are there perhaps ways in which the map sometimes interferes with the territory, or where different issues arise?
Yeah, that's a good question. And of course, anything that human beings get a hold of, they can screw up, and use it in really stupid ways. So that doesn't say anything about the integral map. That's just human beings again. Here we go. So, early second tier, and we keep changing the colors. So I just say early second tier, late second tier, third tier. I can't get teal, this or that. I get yellow. Anyway, so it's a bit confusing for my poor brain. So that's what I say. But it's often more of an intellectual awakening. You start, oh my God, it's developmental. This is why, the culture wars are going on. And this is why we can't get along at Thanksgiving dinner. And this is, it's why mom was like this and dad was like this. And this is, ooh, God, that's me. Yeah, that's what I'm definitely orange or whatever it might be. But if it becomes kind of an elitist thing and it doesn't lead you to being more effective and more compassionate, and you're like, hey, I'm above everybody, and your little ego gets attached to it in an unhealthy way, yeah, it can be really annoying and not very helpful, and it could be more divisive than helpful. And when you're a born again integralist, many of us, in the early days, wow, we had to tell everybody about this and stuff. And so now I don't even talk about it unless I'm asked, or unless it seems very appropriate. But I'm using it all the time to, I'm living in the South right now in very conservative, blue areas, and I just deal with people where they're at. and they have wonderful, strength and great love and great loyalty. And there's so many good things about it that I take them where where they are. And I talk to them in language that they can understand. I won't go all green on them. If, they're not there, it's just why? If it's used as something that challenges you and helps you grow in wisdom and compassion and helps you grow in a sense of responsibility to working on yourself, it can be a good thing. Yeah, but can you do the Darth Vader thing and use it to manipulate people? And probably, they know what buttons to push and stuff like that. Yeah, so it could be used in a bad way. And that would be kind of really, you see dictators and propagandists and stuff like that you seem to have developmental levels and know what triggers to push in order to manipulate people. So this knowledge could be used in a surely marketing way, to push stupid things on people that they don't need. I mean, you look at advertising and so, okay, who are they appealing to? Big pickup truck going through the mud with, what is that? Oh, that's probably red, or green or whatever it might be. So they could be used in ways that are not helpful or just bad. But if it's used in I think in the spirit that it was given in, and if we use it primarily initially as a very self-reflective tool, to before we change the world, kind of sort ourselves out, and do the work that we need to do, I don't think it can be anything but helpful. And it's just a great gift. And it's just like, it's just a map. Well, I was a wilderness guide for many years, and without maps, you could get lost in the country I was running and never find your way out. And I think I quoted a kid in my book, the line, he says, to break out of prison, you need a good map, so let's give it the credit that is due, and how, there's really never been anything like it. Now, there are people that are pushing into integral that have never heard Ken Wilber, of course, they're there just because that's what, the teleos or what evolution is pushing us toward. But there's never been anything that I've seen that really is as effective and as simple to grasp and as useful. And of course, all of us who have been working on it are part of it too. It's not just the Ken Wilber thing anymore. He birthed it, and gave it to us. And Namali, you're one of the best people on the planet talking about this stuff. You have great insight and do a beautiful job. And I've thought lately that, I can't believe we still have Ken with us with all the stuff that he's gone through physically. But if he were to go, leave his body tomorrow, I think there's enough mature integralists around who've made a lot of the mistakes that one makes, on the journey, that it would be okay. I see it largely being, even if it's not talked about, the ideas and the concepts are largely being accepted in a lot of kind of the cutting edge ideas in science and philosophy and other things. So I don't know, does that answer the question? Just use it right and it'll be a real blessing, and use it wrong and it'll be a bummer, just like most things we get our hands on.
So that's wonderful. I think we can start to wrap up. John, thank you so much for spending a little time with us. Where can anyone interested in what you're doing find out what you're up to?
Okay, let's see. Well, look up iWakeTechnologies.com. That's for or just Google iWake Technologies and it'll get you the website. And also did a lot of podcasts on integral recovery with a couple of colleagues, and there are like 50 or 60 of them that people say really, really helpful if you're dealing with recovery, not only as an addict, but if you have a loved one, or you're a professional health, working with people, that it's good stuff. And more recently, been doing the podcast with Roger Ball's Deep Transformation, where really interesting things happen. It's like this conversation. Sometimes you just get into a zone when people get together and there's a field created. I wasn't walking around feeling really lucid and deep before we started. I was like, okay, get the suitcase fast. We got to get out of here before 11 or something like that. And then just talking to you guys just brought me to a space that was hopefully, it was powerful for me. Hopefully it was a blessing for you guys too.
Very nice. Yeah. I am like just in this moment, like just this maybe final question came up for me. John, you are such a beloved friend and you're such a beloved member of this integral community. I've known you for probably 18 years or so. We're, yeah, 15 to 18 years, I'm pretty sure. So just to leave us with, can you share what is your prayer or what's your deepest wish for yourself as who you are today? And from that place, what is your deepest wish or prayer for the world?
Well, that that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, that God wants me to do. And I use the God word these days. I've made peace with that. I'm fine with that now. Not always, but now. And that I am walking the path that I'm supposed to be walking as a Native American would say. That somehow my little 3rd, 4th, 15th, 16th fiddle part that I'm playing will be part of something that helps humanity survive to the point that we will really be able to reach the incredible potential that we have, to be just magnificent beings, and that we figure our shit out so that all the other creatures, life forms on this planet have a chance to continue their journey with us. And yeah, that I just do my little part. Remember I said how important the individual part is and how it's connected to the whole. Well, my responsibility is to make sure that my little part's doing what it's supposed to be doing, whether it's big ideas, small ideas, helping somebody on the street or talking with these brilliant people and getting ideas out into the world, or working with addicts or whatever it might be. That fits into a greater symphony. And I do think we're gonna go through some really hard times, but I don't know. I can't predict it. And then there's great genius and incredible stupidity in the human family. So hopefully we will figure it out. And maybe one of the big things that I've come to is that essential virtues that human beings need to develop is simply respect for one another. Doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, your color is, your this is, your that is, or what level you're at. Kind of just treat people with respect. Namaste. You're a work in progress. And if you're a psychopath, killing kids in a school, and I have to kill you, well, can I do that respectfully and lovingly? I know that's an extreme thing, but can we just respect one another? I think it starts with learning to forgive ourselves and heal ourselves, and how do we get wise? So yeah, I hope I play my part well, and I sense that there's some magnificent future for humanity, but I don't know how we're supposed to get there. But I think by working on ourselves and by using this map that shows us the work that's there to be done, that we can do it. And I think working on ourselves in this way and working with Integral is going to make it easier for people in the future. Kids, right now, I'm in my 60s, and I see a day when some people 13 are going to be getting everything I know. Yeah, of course, and moving on from there. So,
well, John, thanks for your wisdom and your experience, and for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing, John. Thanks for being you.
Okay, God bless you guys.
Bye. Bye.
You
Love
too,
you.
John.
Thank you, everybody.